What is your small town's dark secret story? Story 1. I don't know if it's considered a dark secret, but in the county I lived in from ages 10 to 18, we had a soldier die under some extremely questionable circumstances. They said he was high/drunk/experiencing mental distress and raided a nursery, the plant kind. They claimed he was attacked by wasps and ran. He called 911 several times and claimed that someone was chasing him and was trying to kidnap him. In the last 911 call, he said everything was fine suddenly. Just 14 to 15 minutes later, he was struck by a woman who stopped and called 911. He was run over 2 more times and died. The autopsy showed no signs of bee or wasp stings. The connection to the nursery is due to the fact that it was just up the road from where he died. The place was ransacked, pizza eaten, money taken. But his wallet and phone were sitting on the counter, undisturbed. However, the family was not ok with that explanation, especially because he had previously texted that there were some problems with the local boys, since the soldier wasn't from this part of the state. So the family had a private investigator look into it. They analyzed the 911 recordings and found several instances of other people talking in the background, though most of it couldn't be made out. Except one. In the 911 call where he told the operator that everything was fine, a male voice could be heard saying, "Tell her," and the nursery. There was no DNA, no fingerprints, no footprints that lead back to the soldier, even though his phone and wallet were there in the building. A lot of people, his family included, think he was killed by some of the local guys there after they got into a fight about something. They chased him down and caught him. He was able to run again after the final 911 call and was hit by a driver while trying to get help. And the police in the county covered the entire thing up because the boys involved were connected to the department somehow. Of the 3 drivers, none were charged for hitting/running over him. I think only the first driver stopped, but it was discovered that one of the other drivers was connected to the department either through family or friendship. It's a crazy story, but you can look it up. Just search Austin McJuff. I wouldn't be too surprised since there is a lot of shady stuff happening in small-town police departments, including covering up rapes that officers commit. I really hope his family gets him justice. Story 2. A freshman with Asperger's was being abused by his family at home. He was a problem child and got in trouble on purpose. But no one went too hard on him because of his home life. He was a well-loved kid at school and in the community. One day, just before holiday break in December, he was really sick, but his mom sent him to school anyway. Locked him out of the house. He decided to try and get into one of the empty houses down the street through the chimney. Now this kid was the size of a 2nd grader, but he was too big to fit through since chimneys taper down thinner. Mom never answered her phone when the school reported him missing. Went a whole day without reporting her kid missing. No one knew what happened to him. It was about a month and a half before we knew what happened to him. We all thought he ran away, was alive somewhere, maybe went to his sister's house. Nope, dead in a chimney. The schools organized an entire week of counseling and such. They wore pink for a day and handed out little pink ribbons on pins for him, since his favorite color was pink. Everyone was hit really hard by it. That's how our small town started in 2020. It hasn't gotten any better, as you can see. So weird that it's almost been a year now. Story 3. We had a crazy rich guy from the 1600s, 1700s who saw people robbing a grave one night, so decided that when he died, he would be laid to rest on the roof of a barn behind his house. He believed he'd only be dead for 30 years, so requested that they lock the barn and put the key in his coffin so he could get out, but nobody could get in. He requested that whoever inherited his house, fortune and belongings would have to give them back to him when he resurrected. He did actually get his wish, but of course he was never resurrected. People stole his bones, and his house is a dentist now. This is also the town where that lady went viral going ham in the alcohol aisle in Aldi a few weeks ago. Story 4. This is a sad one to me. There was an older couple here who ran a halfway house for troubled kids who'd recently gotten out of juvie. They fostered a few as well. They were loved in the community, wonderful people. One of them had an older brother who was a gangbanger in the nearest big city. During a visit, he snuck his 15-year-old younger brother a handgun. Younger bro ended up holding up a local gas station and killed 3 people. One of them was my friend's cousin. The foster parents lost whatever credentials they needed to do what they did. The kids went back into the system, and the giant house has been abandoned since around 2009. Story 5. About 30 years ago, the local 8-year-old girl went missing during the annual carnival downtown. After a few days, they found a suspect that was seen near the girl right before she went missing. The guy confessed to her horrific murder and rape and torture. He was the kid's next-door neighbor and friend to the kid's dad. I'll spare the details, but it was really bad. He was convicted and sentenced to 40 years or so. After 8 years, he was paroled and returned to the same house with his parents, right next door. Laws were a bit different then, to the family of the girl and former friend. About a week later, the man never showed up at his parole office. His parents filed a missing persons report. Rumor has it that several friends of the victim's father took care of him. If you talk to them, they just say that they are sure that he won't be back. Story 6. 15 years ago, the local district attorney called his longtime girlfriend and told her he was taking the day off from work and that he loved her. He parked his car in town and went for a stroll past the local shops. He hasn't been seen since. His car was found where he had parked it the next day. He had left his cell phone in the car, but his keys and wallet were missing. Later that year, his laptop, sans its hard drive, was found under a bridge at a nearby river. The hard drive was eventually discovered by a local woman walking along the bank of the river, but it was too damaged to recover any data from. Interestingly, investigators discovered that someone had done a search on his home computer for how to wreck a hard drive. Did he jump from a local bridge? Did he encounter someone whom he had prosecuted who did him harm? Or did he escape his life to start a new one? Story 7. Back in the 80s, a couple were driving a motorcycle when they were stopped by 3 men, who then raped the woman while forcing her husband to watch. Then they killed both. The police caught them not so long after. The same night that they were caught, a mob of 300+ people gathered in front of the police department, broke in and told the sheriff, "You guys did an excellent job. Now leave it to us." The mob broke the cell where the 3 men were, beat them up and attached them, alive, into cars, and dragged them for 4 miles until a park in the middle of the city, where they set them on fire, alive, while everybody was clapping and cheering. Almost nobody talks about it now, but there's even a video of it. I will try to find it in case anyone is interested. Story 8. About 40% of my hometown was homeless. No one had jobs. No one could afford any kind of housing situation. Neighbors paid for heat where they could on houses people were squatting in, and everyone invited everyone else over for dinner every night. We didn't know who was homeless. We just did it. We hired anyone and everyone for odd jobs. A lot of people just lived as they would when they were kids. Keep the fireplace going with trees you chopped down. Gathered water by the well and traded. Farmed and trapped for food. I went to school with a lot of homeless kids. We had, looking back, the most robust school breakfast program I've ever heard of. I thought it was normal for over half the school to show up until I moved to the city. You just gave people the dignity they deserved. No one was ashamed if they dropped out at grade 10. We all knew that if they needed the job, they should take it. Looking back, I realize how wild it is. Our town was so poor, and no one was treated any differently by me and mine, at least. Sure, there were some rich people, but they overwhelmingly went to the other school. And there were no panhandlers, no beggars, nothing like that. I was just told the Buseys were coming over for dinner. Did I like them? No, I kinda think they were dick. But never did I make them feel uncomfortable, and most just ate, had some tea, and left. And if that doesn't tickle your fancy, A whale washed up on shore one week, and all the guys in the local high school took turns having sex with it. All of them. Story 9. The town I was raised in wasn't exactly small, but here's the one dark secret I know. My hometown was where lots and lots of sports players had their mansions. And so, of course, their wives and children were out and about in the community a lot. Every single sports player wife in that town is heavily addicted to opioids. Every single one. Opioid addiction is obviously an epidemic all over the country, but among the rich wives in the town, it had a 100% infection rate, so to speak. I know because one of my friend's mom was the hairdresser for basically every single one of those wives. I was homeless my senior year of HS, and one of the sports player wives heard about me from her, and she gifted me an iPhone. That phone was pennies to her, but I still wish I'd expressed my thanks more, because that wife died of an overdose not long after. Sorry if that wasn't much of a dark secret, but yeah. Story 10. We have a vineyard hill next to our village. On that hill, there's a big wooden cross. Lots of people go there to drink, have a walk, or with their dogs, but almost nobody knows why the cross is here. During the war, a vineyard keeper lived there with his son. His son was recruited and the man was left alone. When war ended, his son survived and wanted to prank his dad by sneaking on him at night. But the vineyard keeper saw him and thought he was a robber, so he grabbed his rifle and shot the robber. When he found out it was his son, it broke his heart. He dug a grave on top of the hill for his son and erected a big wooden cross next to the grave. When he was done, he laid next to his son and shot himself. From that day, no one worked on the vineyards, and there's a big wooden cross on top of the hill. Now, you can't even recognize there's a grave. Story 11. A guy I went to high school with threw a trailer hitch at an indigenous woman and yelled "Got one" when he did. She suffered terrible injuries and was in the hospital for months before eventually dying. She had some other health conditions that didn't make it easy for her to stay alive. He was being tried for aggravated assault first, then they brought it up to second-degree murder. It's been brought down to manslaughter because they didn't have enough evidence to charge it as murder. He pleaded guilty to the manslaughter charge. My city is plagued with a major prejudice to the indigenous people. My family was the same way. I grew up thinking it was normal and said some terrible things. I realized I didn't even know why I had this hate. I did a 180 on that a while ago. This is how a lot of the town is, and the sad part is there are so many people in the city that are on this guy's side because she was going to die anyway, because they were just looking for hookers, or she was drunk, basically anything to cover up what they really mean, because she is native. Shit like this is normal here. The police have labeled some deaths as accidental drownings, even though it's clear that they didn't just fall into the river. Someone I knew was picked up and almost thrown in themselves if it wasn't for a stranger. Canada has a lot of issues like this already, the tragedies surrounding the indigenous people. But our city is one of the worst. Seeing people discarded like that makes me feel disgusted and guilty to have been proud to be Canadian. Story 12. A popular yoga teacher, trainer / studio owner, known and respected not just here, but all over the U.S., was caught not only cheating on his second wife with his current GIF and business partner, but it was revealed in the last year that he had groomed and raped the second wife's 17-I/0 niece. She didn't come forward until last year because he had said it was in the best interest of spirituality to keep it secret, and talking would ruin the spiritual bond. Gag. He still has his studio, his GIF, his license to teach / train yogas, and is now getting a master's degree in psychology at a prestigious Ivy League school despite the allegations. I took teacher training with him several times, and I can attest to the fact that he is pervy, but also that he's very charismatic and intelligent, getting people to drink the Kool-Aid, shell out the big bucks, and for his guru pies to fawn over him. Typical narcissistic garbage.